This video isn't your typical how-to video. It's a video about the realities of putting up wallpaper on your own. The first thing I'm doing is measuring a straight line for me to line up my first piece of wallpaper up against so everything hopefully goes on straight. The second part of all of this is taking off all of the covers on the light switches and anything else that's on the wall. I'm going to list everything that you need to do this entire project in the comments below. If you don't know, taking the covers off of light switches is super easy. You just need to screw them, take a screw and screw them off, and then pop the cover right off. I wanted to quickly talk here about one of my favorite tools. This is a pick quick. The bits are interchangeable and they're held within the screwdriver. You can also use the bits in a drill. So I have one of these on me almost at all times. And one of my friends actually got it for me when he found out that I was starting to do a lot of DIYs at home. So super thankful for that. Once your wall is prepped, not only did I draw the line on it and take off all of the covers on anything that was on the wall, I also quickly wiped it down so that it was a nice clean surface for my wallpaper to go on. You move on to getting the wallpaper ready. Never skip reading the instructions because there are so many different types of wallpaper that you can buy. And I think it's just good to double check that whatever you have is going to be applied the right way. I've done wallpaper where it's just adhesive and you stick it onto the wall, which I hate those wallpapers. And I've done this type where you use glue right onto the wallpaper and then stick it onto the wall. And I've done the part where you just use water, you spray water onto the wallpaper and then it goes up onto the wall. The reason why I don't like adhesive wallpaper is because once it's on the wall, you can't move it. And one of the steps that I always do when applying wallpaper and that I like that I can do is that I put it on, I don't push it on, and then I can kind of slide it around to make sure all the seams are gonna line up perfectly. With adhesive wallpaper, I found that you couldn't do that. And actually, I've only done that once, so correct me if I'm wrong and you can. It was my first time wallpapering and I applied it upside down. It's in my daughter's room. Apparently you can't really tell that it's upside down, but I did have one person on Instagram point it out to me when I first posted it. After you've cut the piece of wallpaper to the size you want, the next step is going to be applying the adhesive. So I'm using a specific brush for this step. I've tried to use other methods before when you're applying adhesive, and this is the best way that I found. It makes sure that the adhesive goes on like really nice and smooth, that there's no clumps, and yeah, it's just, if you're gonna apply wallpaper, this is what I recommend, this brush tool, which again, I'm gonna link down below. So one thing I learned the hard way when applying wallpaper is that the glue actually dries kind of like a white. It's water-based, so it's really easy to clean up if it does get anywhere you don't want it. But the last time I did dark wallpaper, it kind of got all over the wallpaper, so I spent a lot of time cleaning it up afterwards. So here, I'm trying my best not to get any of the glue onto the wallpaper side. And this process here where you're folding it up onto itself, it's called booking the wallpaper. And it just makes things, I mean, I'm not sure the real reasons why you do it, but I find that it makes the wallpaper easier to carry around, and it also kind of keeps that glue moist and makes sure it doesn't dry out when you're applying the upper part of the wallpaper. Also, I hate the word moist. So as you can see, I've gotten some of the panels up already, and I'm getting ready to do this next panel. Because my wallpaper is dark and the wall is light, so there's a lot of contrast between the colors, what I'm doing in the video right now is I'm taking a black marker and I'm drawing on the wall and on the side of the piece of wallpaper that's already up on the wall. This is for two reasons. The main reason I'm gonna say is I don't want the seam to show. And so the two reasons why I do this is because if the pieces aren't exactly beside each other and the tiniest bit of wall is showing, it's gonna show because it's that light kind of grayish color against the black. The second reason why I'm doing this is because the wallpaper, when it's made, it's printed onto white paper. So the edges of the wallpaper are white. That will also show and be extremely evident and be very visible seam, which will completely annoy me when everything's done. So along with drawing on the wall, I'm also dragging my marker along the edge of the wallpaper. And you can kind of see I'm actually kind of folding the wallpaper up a little bit just to make sure I get that edge. And when I get the edge, the wallpaper soaks up that ink and becomes black, which is what I want. So I don't put the glue all the way to the edge there, and I go along later and actually apply more glue with a little paintbrush or, my finger, whatever I need to do. This probably is not the way that professionals do it, but this is what has worked for me. So the next step is getting that next panel on. It's a tight space. There's a big ladder that's not on screen that's kind of in the way. And so there I am trying to maneuver my way through the door, up the ladder, and onto a built-in dresser that's actually in the corner there to get this piece up on the wall. I feel like when you're wallpapering on your own, and maybe just in general, just take your time and don't rush things. I actually did this project over a few days, probably only spending like an hour or two each time. There's just so many things that can kind of go wrong with wallpaper that I find it's best to just take your time. So that's why I'm moving so slow. And here, what I'm gonna be doing is lining everything up. So I did kind of try to like tack that top piece on and then removed it right away because it wasn't gonna work. Sometimes you can kind of tack one side on and then move the other side around, but I did find this wallpaper to be quite stiff and I wasn't always able to do that. So taking my time, making sure everything's lined up, wallpaper is falling over me. I've actually had, been trying to line things up while wallpaper is like right over on top of me. You just make it work. This is one of the most important parts because if it's off, it's going to be really noticeable. If you're anything like me, that will annoy you. I kind of practiced with doing this by using wallpaper that wasn't as noticeable if it wasn't lined up. So I used light wallpaper on light walls, and the color was actually a cream color with a light gray pattern over top. So the pattern wasn't 100% matched. You couldn't really tell, and I didn't have to use the marker method I previously mentioned. I probably smiled at my husband or my kids that probably came in to check to see what I was doing. So I'm using the ladder here just to get right up into that corner and make sure that the piece is going on straight. You want to make sure your pieces don't start to like flop all over the place and go on diagonally. I've had that happen to me and it's not fun, especially if it's just a little bit and you don't notice, because then all your other panels are going to be crooked. Anyways, I'm flattening this out now, and I'm also kind of like pushing it into the corner of the door frame. You can't really see it, and I apologize for that. After I push the wallpaper onto the wall, I grab a tool. I don't know what any of these tools are called, but I'm going to list them in the comments. But I use this special tool to kind of like push the wallpaper up into the crease between the wall and the ceiling. And then I just use a box cutter, run it along the tool to get that excess wallpaper off. There's a close-up later on in this video where you'll be able to see what I'm doing up close. I always like to make sure that the edges of the wallpaper are sticking to the wall really well. So I just kind of go around and double check. Sometimes while I'm putting up the wallpaper, it kind of dries or something. Or maybe it's just like you know, it's not as sticky because of all the times I've adjusted it. So I just kind of go in and use a small paintbrush and on my fingers sometimes, depending on how patient I am, and just kind of add more glue. And then I also go in with a marker, which is what I'm doing right now, and just color the edge of the wallpaper again with the black marker so that that white seam from the wallpaper doesn't show. Don't need to do the wall again here because I've already made sure that was done when I was coloring its neighbor. Here I'm going along the door frame. I'm using the same tool I used in between the ceiling and the wall, and now I'm just using it between the wall and the door frame. One trick is once you cut off kind of that top part, you see I cut a diagonal line right to the corner of the door frame, and that's just so that your wallpaper is not bending and crinkling any weird way. And then once that's done, I start to cut off the other side of the wallpaper, which is what I'm doing right now. So this here is just a close-up of trimming everything. This isn't the greatest view here, but I decided to keep it in because you can see that this piece here, you can tell that it's quite long. And so what I actually do is I cut a part of it off, a part that's already detached from the wallpaper before continuing on. So I'm going to do that right here. Just grab my scissors, double check where I'm at, and then cut off that excess weight that's just pulling on the rest of the wallpaper. Then I go back in and I continue to just flatten things. In this frame, you can also see that I've also gone around a light switch. You can kind of see there's still like wallpaper over it, and there's a tool I use in my box cutter, and I'm just trimming it off. But anyways, back to the light switch, you can see that there, like I've already cut out some pieces of wallpaper that was covering it, and I will go back and cut out those other pieces as well. So this is the bottom of the same wall. Again, you can see a light switch is half covered because this is a second panel on it. But yeah, that's how I just cut off that excess. So it's super easy. It's actually very satisfying. Corners sometimes can be tricky. Again, just take your time. The tool is not going to fit in that little edge. So I just kind of did it by hand. There I felt for that other hole, and that's how you cut it. So you cut it like an X, and that was for the vacuum. So I took off the cover earlier on in the video, and there I am just exposing it. So I just kind of pull it apart like that, and then I cut it off, sometimes right away, sometimes later. Okay, so here's something I don't recommend you do unless you absolutely have to. So this wallpaper was really expensive, and I didn't want to have to go out and buy another roll just for the few like really small areas left that I had to do. So I took all my scraps and I basically like finagled it all together, which means that I had seams going horizontally. Ideally, you don't want that, but in this case, I just did it. I also knew that specifically in this corner here, I do have like things that sit there. I have a picture frame, I have my jewelry stand, so I knew that it was going to be kind of covered. And as long as I took my time, took it slowly, and just really matched things up, I knew it would be fine. And nobody's noticed that it doesn't match until I point it out. So I noticed, and it kind of annoys me, but it doesn't annoy me enough to go buy another roll of wallpaper. And here I am again, just kind of doing the same thing where I'm using scrap wallpaper to fill in extra space. And yeah, I think this was the only space where I kind of did that, those two areas that I showed. And so thank you so much for watching. This kind of brings us to the end of the video. There's not much else. And so I hope you learned something from this. It's not exactly how to, like I said at the beginning, it's more just the realities of wallpapering on your own and things that I've learned from doing it. So yeah, thank you.